We've got another great story to share with you today, an inspiring journey into local government leadership, because that's what we do here on the Halting Winter podcast. We tell the stories behind the titles, the unique paths into public service, and the moments that shape how these leaders show up, even when the work gets heavy. Every day, local government quietly makes modern life possible, and behind every service is a person doing work that often goes unseen. This is the Halting Winter podcast, and I'm Seth Winterhalter. Every week, I have the pleasure of sitting down with local government leaders from across the country that remind us where government really lives, locally, doing the work that truly matters. This is the work that builds belonging. Before we hear today's conversation, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Tyler Technologies has been exclusively serving the public sector since 1998, partnering with cities and counties to make their work more manageable, more connected, and more effective. From smarter budgeting to artificial intelligence, Tyler equips local governments with software and solutions that help leaders serve with clarity, efficiency, and impact. You can explore a variety of free resources at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter. And if today's conversation resonates with you, I want to invite you to check out the Municipal Leadership Development Circle. It's a global community of local government leaders who are committed to growing together, supporting one another, and leading well in the middle of municipal pressure. You can learn more about the MLDC at haltingwinter.com/MLDC. That's haltingwinter.com/MLDC. And now, let's turn to today's conversation. My guest on the podcast today is Josh Finch, City Administrator in Waupaca, Wisconsin. Josh, welcome to the podcast. It is great to have you on today.
Thanks for having me, Seth. I'm really looking forward to being able to talk with you today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward, but we're recording this just a few days before the WCMA Winter Conference, which I'm about to hit on a plane and fly out to deliver the closing keynote. By the time this airs, it'll be the most fabulous keynote ever. We'll have hugged and spent some time together in person. But until then, we're going to have to record this and play it like it's already happened, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm looking forward to being out there. It's going to be great. And we're doing the, what's the keynote? Usually I do the Balance is BS keynote, but Don Peters wanted the strategic pause, which it's going to be great. I actually am doing that for you guys, then for some Missouri City clerks and finance officers the next week. So we're having a good time traveling around. But I want to dive in and hear all about Wisconsin. We've had a number of guests on lately. In fact, I just did a post today that said, I'm looking forward to coming out to the WCMA. And here's the guests. I think we've had on 6 or 7 guests from Wisconsin over the last few months. And man, just some great stories, some really inspiring, again, journeys into city management, which is always cool. And then some great work being done in the cities. And so I can't wait to unpack it all, but let's do that. Before we get to your really inspiring professional career, let's unpack it and get to know you a little bit. Tell us about where you were born and this childhood that shaped your really unique path into city management.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Seth. My background in city administration, to kind of just highlight it at the start, is it's not your traditional route, and everything that you ever learn becomes a part of what you do. So I was born in Neenah, Wisconsin. And if you're not familiar, go and take a look at a manhole cover and you're going to see the Neenah Foundry. And that's kind of like the bread and butter with Neenah right there, right? And during my upbringing, I was heavily involved with theater, fine arts, forensics, did a lot of public speaking, did a lot of on-stage performances, band, choir, student government, Vex robotics, everything that you can imagine, a lot of different organizations. But I maybe wasn't necessarily the best student in the world, right? Academics wasn't necessarily something that was a true calling as a student. And so I'll be honest, I never expected to really go to college. My route was maybe trades or the military. And then I randomly was approved to go to UW Stevens Point. I had put in for an application for a couple campuses, and Hadn't really heard back from a couple of them. And then ultimately, I was accepted at UW Stevens Point for a degree that I really had very little idea about. Uh, the degree is a Bachelor of Arts, Arts Management. And the main reason that I ended up pursuing that degree was a family friend that said, well, you're into the arts, you've got some good ideas with communication. It's a pretty vague degree. So why don't you give it a shot? The worst thing that you can do is, worst thing that could happen is changing your degree, right? Uh, and sure enough, I go into the program and instantaneous. I knew that it was what I wanted, you know, wanted to kind of get into the management of the arts administration, whatever you want to call it. But I realized very quickly that that kind of field is very difficult. And while I enjoyed the premise of it, uh, I knew that I wanted to try and find something that I can get into. So during my time at Point, I was pretty heavily involved with the Student Government Association and actually ran the campaign for the eventual student body president and vice president. And we had some great conversations throughout the year and a half of working with them. Ultimately, I ended up accepting a role as a chief justice, which was pretty much the individual that oversaw all student academic and non-academic misconduct for the University of Stevens Point, and largely related to the student organizations. So that was a strong um, influence on getting involved with management, right? Having to work with a body. As I started managing four other, we call it student justices, and I got close to graduation, and I thought, man, I have no idea what I'm going to do when I grow up. And I feel like that's a common thought for a lot of people. You know what I mean, Seth? I mean, really, some people have it all figured out. I I was not one of those individuals, and that's okay. And I'll be honest, I really do wish that in high school someone were to have told me it's okay to not know your career path. It's okay to not know exactly every minute detail, because living in that ambiguity, living in that unknown, it's okay. And so I graduate college without really a plan. And on a whim, I decided, you know what? I like the idea of government. At this point, I had been working for Winnebago County, started off as a seasonal, worked my way up to a lead role, and at that point, working with and managing crews of around 12 to 15 individuals, full time, part time individuals. And I think I could maybe make a career in some kind of governmental role. Really had no idea what at this point. So after some discussions, a friend of mine reached out and said, "Hey, were you looking at a master's program?" I was like, "No, I was not. I don't even think I could. I don't even think I could qualify for getting into grad school. Again, not necessarily someone with a high GPA. Um, not like I'm a bad student, but I was heavily involved with other things, SGA, fraternity Greek life, various organizations like a 10X Club. And so ultimately it turned into, maybe, maybe I should look at grad school. Sure enough, I applied to UW Oshkosh and was accepted. And I started my program in 2019. And it was the best decision that I ever did. Um, because it really did help progress me into where I am at today. Fast forward through the year of COVID, year and a half with the COVID pandemic, while going to school full time, I learned a lot. I learned about the workload, the pressures, because once I was hired full time by Winnebago County, uh, we had some fun tasks, largely with where I was located within the Department of Sunnyview Expo Center with the Parks Department. We ended up actually having to facilitate uh, it was a regional COVID testing facility, and it turned into not just a COVID testing, but also a COVID vaccination clinic. And we were responsible for some of the ground logistics. And I think, as a lot of people know, there were a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of uncertainty, and ultimately, we were definitely pivoting a lot of flexibility, working on the fly, and that really helped progress my abilities at understanding that, again, living in a little bit of gray, living in that ambiguity, because ultimately you can't be rigid. You have to be flexible with where things are at. That doesn't mean that you can't have a line in the sand, and having that boundary is very important, but ultimately, especially in management roles, you have to kind of ebb and flow, knowing that dynamic, and ultimately knowing that there are certain things that you can't control either. And that led me into my first administrative job at the age of 24 years old. And yeah, yeah.
Okay. We got to back up. There's so many good things already. Okay, so let's go back to when, because this is one of the big things stands out to me multiple ways that you've said this now. You said that you weren't a scholastic kid, meaning like you grades, but you're very active and involved. It's not like you're out smoking J's behind the, just bored out of your life. You're involved in all these things. You got robotics and ASB, student body, arts, music. I resound with that, or I resonate with that, and I think about like Gary V. Most people know Gary Vaynerchuk, and he kind of talks about this all the time. He says we have to remember, I think, that our education system, especially over the last 30 years, has gone sideways in a few ways, but it specifically only looks at the specific kid who tests well and who is there for a grade. And I think that we're missing out on some of the best and brightest who I was one of those. Like I never studied a minute in high school for anything. And I got really good grades because I have almost a photographic, auditory memory. And so it was easy for me. But that wasn't good because, like, I don't know if I learned much in high school, but I was I was on every sports team. I was in every music group. I did every arts. I was ASB student body president. I was involved. And yet, and only by the grace of God did I have a good GPA. But I think there's a number of other students like that who, again, didn't. They didn't, have good GPAs, and it hindered their ability to go on, or they just tapped out. They said, well, I can't. There's like kind of I can't go to college. Like I'm not a student. I'm not scholastic. And yet I love that there are colleges that say, hey, wait a minute, maybe we can look at some other things. Maybe we've got some academic advisors or some guidance counselors going, hey, wait a minute, like I see something else in the writing here, and gives you that opportunity. Let's back up and just look at that for a minute. It seems like, again, am I tea leaving? Am I writing my own your own narrative? Or it seems like, again, you were active and stuff, so you were engaged, you were a curious person. Talk about that, and maybe we can help someone who's young feel and go, well, maybe I'm like Josh, and maybe I kind of am I disqualifying myself, or have disqualified, or pitching myself into one track. What would you say to them in light of your story?
No, absolutely. And that's such a great point. Before I answer that, I do want to just say I I was actually told to not consider college. My guidance counselor, I will never forget sitting in her office, and she pretty much said, "You should consider the trades because that's probably where or the military, because that's where you're more. That's more your fit." And I have carried that with me, not in a resentment factor. And because there is nothing wrong with the trades, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the military, but it's how it was worded, right? And for those young, old, in between, age wise, trying to figure out their career, trying to figure out the life component of it, comes back to it's okay not to know, and the engagement factor is important, right? Um, you know, I actually just gave a lecture a few weeks ago, and the question that I got was, Josh, what was your GPA? I had no, I mean, like my college GPA was 2.9, not horrible, not horrible, but that's because I worked at it really, really hard at the end, um, because I wanted to sustain the degree. Uh, but I know without support within my life, family, some great friends, some great mentors. I mean, I will absolutely, I got to give my grandma a shout out, because there was a point where I probably could have had some summer school, and or maybe not kicked out, but maybe said, hey, maybe you're not necessarily right for this school here. in high school, right? And my grandma, still alive, bless her soul, she tutored me through a specific class. I went to her work like every day for almost an entire semester to try and get a better understanding of that. And she pushed me so hard. Um, I mean, don't get me wrong, my parents were heavily involved as well, but my grandma was and is such a strong influence in the actions of my life because it comes back to keeping the main thing. And for me at that point was it wasn't get a 4.0, it wasn't get a 3.0. It was the main thing was complete the task, complete the objective. And I am so thankful that she has instilled that into me. Um, because the work ethic is a part of it, right? I wasn't a great student, but there are things that I do want to continue to try to excel at, and that's the engagement, the personable, some of the soft skills, right? The work ethic is a lot of um, because you're not defined necessarily by a situation. You're defined how you respond to the situation.
So true. And again, back to like the trades and the military, with some of the degrees I've seen places given away, like I'm telling you, like I would trust a tradesperson in their education and in their skill set over some of the degrees I see them handing out in college these days. And again, it's just to say that there is we need it all, and there are skills and there are ways to see. I think it's less about intelligence and the way we see the world and the way we experience the world and the way we learn. And I think many people are more hands-on experiential learning. And that's why one of the things I love about local government is internships, and we're doing something behind the scenes, learning from Mike Rowe and his foundation, what he's done to get people into the trades. We want to do the same thing with local gov. How do we offer some more scholarships, some more opportunities? Because cities need people. And that's one of the things, we're going to talk about this in your story. There are a lot of part-time positions, parks and rec, and rec centers, and lawn care, mowing. We had someone on the other day talked about that was their first job, mowing for a city. I mean, there's so many ways to get people in the door of local gov. And the key is, though, I think that we have a lot of those, maybe part time, but they have no idea their check comes from the city of so and so, but they don't see them as in local gov. They're just doing a part time job. They're just an umpire. We just had on someone that's their story. They were an umpire. That's Abby's story. That her episode releases tomorrow. She didn't really know local gov until it's like the parks director was like, oh yeah, we have more going on here. Really? Like, oh, okay. And so it's just such a cool environment, local gov. And so anyway, let's go back to your story. I love this. When you're growing up, just I usually ask this because I always find it fascinating. Was there any, I mean, you said you're in student body government. I was ASB president. I still had no idea. If you would have helped me at gunpoint and said, what's a city manager? I would have had to fake that, balderdash that answer entirely. I had no idea. I barely even knew elected. Again, I didn't live like in the city, but did you have any awareness of local gov where you were growing up? Was that even on the radar as far as the services and et cetera?
Yes, actually, it was. I was actually probably a lot more versed in local and county government than most people, uh, because I have spent my entire life in local and county government. Um, I actually mean that. I mean, my grandfather was an elected official for 30 plus years. Um, he was a town chair for a couple of years on the town board for us, and then was on the county board for, gosh, 28, 30 years. Uh, so public service has always been at the forefront of my upbringing. My mom worked in nursing and in education. My dad is a truck driver. My grandma was an educator and appointed dean of students. My grandfather was a mill worker and served in the military. My dad served in the military. My grandpa, public official. I mean, for me, that public sector, that public service component has really been instilled into me truly in my entire life. Uh, I mean, I can remember riding along with my grandpa growing up, when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, doing campaign stops, right? Little campaigning along the way with him. And that's 20 plus years ago. I remember doing that all the way through up until he retired from it. And there's such and for me, there's such an important factor of that public engagement, uh, that public service, right? Because if you have in my opinion, if you have the ability to do something good for a community, you should be trying to, right? Uh, because there's something to be said about unity within a community.
If you've attended a conference lately, I'm sure you've noticed that AI is everywhere in local government right now. In fact, it comes up in many of the conversations I have with leaders from across the country every week. There's so much to be excited about. The idea that we can streamline work, reduce repetitive tasks, and really help residents get what they need faster. These are all amazing things. It's one of the reasons I appreciate the way Tyler Technologies is approaching artificial intelligence. They're helping cities and counties like yours modernize workflows and use AI in practical ways that are actually improving operations and helping you deliver faster results for your residents. They've just released a new ebook. I want to encourage you to download it. It's called AI for Impact: Proven Results for Government. It highlights the real-world examples of how agencies are using AI right now to strengthen their daily operations to better serve their communities. That ebook, it's yours completely free. Head over to tylertech.com/winter to download your copy. And if you're going to be attending the National League of Cities Congressional City Conference in Washington, D.C., I want to encourage you to connect with the Tyler team there, get your questions answered, engage, and learn more about how you can implement and use AI in your context. Again, go download that free guide. It's at tylertech.com/winter, tylertech.com/winter. Now, back to the conversation. Absolutely. I think it's it's so interesting. Again, these things that shape, right? Again, you're hanging out in the truck, you're going to the pit stops, doing all the elected official stuff. And that probably shaped then when you, got into elected student body and helped with that in your college. It just kind of natural. Like, oh, it's just amazing how we think, oh, I kind of know what's going on here. Or I'm not scared of it because I've been around it. Right. And yet, like, the career of local gov never really, it seemed, kind of dawned on you as you're pursuing this arts management in your undergrad. Now, let's go back to the MPA program, because when you start at Oshkosh, which I think is where we're going, right, for the WCMA. Aren't we in Oshkosh?
Yes, it is.
I'm going to have a childhood memory. Oshkosh bagosh and my childhood suspenders. I don't think I ever took those off. I just lived in those things. So, again, remind the listeners and me again, was it someone who kind of asked you about, like, have you considered a master's? And you're kind of like, yeah, I barely got into the undergrad. Like, I'm not going to. And why was it the MPA? What was it there? Now, you said you were already working for the county. Maybe back up and tell us about that. How did you start working for the county? What was that? Give us the picture there.
Yeah. No. So my sister worked at the county. It was something where, during college, my sister and I both were strongly encouraged to find a labor kind of job, and she found her way to the county after working some time in a mill. And after her time, it was kind of a strong assumption that I would kind of follow her footsteps, right? Working seasonally within the county. And sure enough, that's what I did. My first job was a front laborer working for Winnebago County in the Parks and Sunnyview Expo Center. And I learned a lot, shoveling horse manure, cleaning all of the awful toilets, pulling weeds. When you're kind of like the low guy on the totem pole, you learn very quickly uh, when you're tasked with a unpleasant job, how to get it done efficiently, effectively, um, and especially so you don't have to do it again. Because let me tell you, pulling weeds once in the summer in 100-degree heat, not fun. Having to do it 2 or 3 times, you learn very quickly. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it right the first time.
Mm.
And but again, it's all of those instances that really helps you learn yourself. Learning. Um, I mean, obviously, it's a job. Don't get me wrong, but there's still that learning component with your job, right? And I definitely learned a lot. I very very appreciative of all of those experiences. And so while I'm working, I finished up my undergraduate, and there was just a point of, okay, what am I going to do next? Bartend? Do I try to find a job in the arts field, knowing that with where I'm located, I'm probably going to have to move out of the area and or potentially out of state to find something for the first job. Um, because I still at this point really didn't know what exactly I wanted. So a friend of mine in college had mentioned that they were looking at potentially getting a master's degree. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like my sister has one, my grandma has one. Like it's not unbeknownst to me about a master's program. So I kind of was picking their brain, and next thing you know, they're like, oh, you should like you got interested in the public sector. Have you thought about a master's in public administration? I'm like, I have no idea what that even is. So fast forward a year and a half, I'm like looking into different programs, different programs across the Midwest, and I come across a handful of them that I'm pretty intrigued on. But Oshkosh being right in my backyard really caught my eye. And I'm very appreciative of being able to have gone to Oshkosh and be a Titan, um, because I've been able to meet so many great individuals, from the professors to students, and cohorts that I wasn't necessarily with, but I built relationships with them across the time, and some of them have actually come on to be some of my best friends. I'm very fortunate for a lot of that.
I love it. It's such a important, I think, part of um, the journey. The MPA, like you say, to build network, to also talk about, many of these programs will put you into internships. You're already working at the county, so did they? Was there some kind of and I think you stayed working at the county. Was there some kind of like was there any kind of deeper involvement when you started the MPA that they're like on the radar of, oh, okay, maybe this is where you want to go trajectory? What was that like? And then you stay at Winnebago County again through 2021, I think, until you even after you finish up the MPA. And so maybe talk about that whole experience of the MPA and continuing. I think you come on full time at Winnebago. And then when a part of this journey did you think city administration? This is what I want. This is what I want to do. So don't take us to Hillsborough yet. Tell us about the setup first.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So I graduated May of 2021, right after my 25th birthday. It was probably about into my second semester that I realized that public administration could be an avenue for me as a municipal manager. I was kind of still on the cusp on, do I kind of focus more on the nonprofit sector, or more on the governmental side of it, because they did have an emphasis that could have been with the non-governmental entity. And I don't regret it at all. I don't regret that route at all. I was actually working on a paper for uh, Dr. Carl Nolenberg, and the premise was about interviewing someone within a certain area in municipal management. And I picked um, a, a a friend, someone that I view as a mentor as well, and now a professional colleague, which is incredible. Jeff Sergio, who is the village manager for Fox Crossing, formerly the town of Menasha. I can truly attribute a lot of the engagement that I've had with him over the years as a great kind of push to pursue this. Because at this point, I had may or may not have looked at a potential run for local office, and maybe following my grandfather's footsteps, and who knows. And I was making a joke to him one day about wanting to maybe get more involved, and he said, or public administration, city administration, village administration, like maybe a little bit more consistent. Maybe it's more something like long term. And I'll be honest, until he brought that up, I didn't really think about it too much. And I'm so thankful that he did, because it really helped. It gave me that continued push. And so I started looking into it more, started doing more research, looking into state statute, looking into community structures. And I realized that this is absolutely something that I wanted to. I'll never forget, I applied for a job thinking that, oh gosh, like I'll be a great candidate. I'm sure I can at least get an interview. I'm like, it's a community of, I don't know, like 4,500 people in Wisconsin. I'm like, I'm sure that I might at least get some kind of response. Nothing, not a zippo zilch. And then I'm about halfway through the degree, and I start putting in a couple feelers here and there, and finally, I'm not gonna name names, but there is someone that does some recruiting here in Wisconsin, and this individual calls me up and is like, "Josh, I think you got potential, but we need to be maybe just a little realistic with your aspirations to start off with." He's like, "You don't even have a master's degree yet. You're not getting into a community of 12,000 population." And my response was, "Well, I know, but they got a response at least." And I ended up working with this individual, kind of trying to figure out, what are some good opportunities. And I'm so thankful, because again, this is such a great field, and the the, the individuals, my colleagues, our colleagues, they are so supportive. Whether they are a recruiter, whether they're another administrator, another just involved organizer, consultant, whatever it might be, it is such a great supportive field. Truly, everybody wants to see everybody succeed, and I'm so thankful that this individual kind of helped push me into the continued right direction. And it's a common theme of it's not one person, it's not two people, it's not three or five or six, it's a village, right? For each of us, right? It's not just one defining moment, it's many little moments that helps push the trajectory of a person, not just career, but their overall life. And call it the butterfly effect, if you will. And I will never forget this. It was late 2020, yeah, late 2020. I get a phone call, and this individual said, "There's nothing on the docket right now for you, but there could be." Like, huh, okay. A few months go by, and I get a phone call. This individual says, "Hey, there's a job opening that I think you could at least get an interview with." And I'm like, "Perfect. Okay, let's go. Let's figure this out." I put in an application, and mind you, this is at this point probably February, March, probably about March of 2021. Finishing up my master's, graduated in May. So time frame still a little bit before that. So I'm like, okay, well, a little nervous. I don't have that degree just yet. I've been rejected from a few jobs for not having. And he said, don't worry. You're about to get it though. And that's kind of what matters. I go and submit my application, and the darndest thing happened to me. Mind you, again, 2021 April, working at a COVID testing and vaccination clinic, where I'm around probably 1,000 or so people a day that are testing and or getting vaccinated. I was exposed and a potential risk for being contracting COVID. So the 2 days before the interview, I called the firm up and I said, "Look, I haven't tested yet, but I was exposed to, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to test for COVID here. What do you want me to do? Because I would like to be able to interview, but I also don't want to be around people with this." And they allowed me to do a virtual interview, and I'm so thankful for that. So Saturday comes, feeling fantastic, of course, going into a phone interview with everybody. And I thought I interviewed okay. Not great, but okay. Well, it definitely was not great, because I didn't get the job. And I get a call the next day, and they're like, "Hey, you know what? You'll get the next one," kind of thing. Like, you're making great strides. Keep it up. Like, don't lose hope. And we'll be in touch is how they left it at. But they left it very positive, very, very positive. So I go back that following Monday or Tuesday, working in the barns. I'm not joking. My task that week was cleaning out, mucking stalls, power washing stalls, making them ready for the horse shows that are going to be coming up. So it's a little bit of a 180 thinking about, I might have an opportunity to become a city administrator. Oh, back to the horses we go. And I don't regret it. I loved every minute of it. I still do, because there's that factor of remembering the roots of it. I will never forget. I get a call. I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, and I get a message. I get a message from the firm, and they said, "Hey, if this position were to come available for you to actually interview again, would you still be interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, without a doubt. Are you kidding me? Like, tell me when, where, how, who, what. I'll be there." And may have just been a bad day, with the horse stalls and whatnot, but I jumped at it, right? And fast forward a week, and I am interviewing for that same job that I was rejected at about a week and a half prior, and that job is Hillsborough. And that night, I interviewed with the council. Friday morning, offered the job. I tell that, and I love to tell the fact that I was rejected, because it's important to note that things happen for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And it was a great reminder that in life, nothing is a certainty. You are owed nothing. You have to work for it. You have to grind for that success. Don't be complacent. And I'm not saying that I was going into it, because I really wasn't. But knowing how quickly something can be given and taken away, I think it's such a great reminder that everything that you do has a purpose. Leaving Winnebago after many years of seasonal work, and then full-time, the job that I knew, the environment that I knew, the staff that I had, loved to work with over many years, having trained most of the staff, was difficult, but it was such a great experience, because it's not necessarily about saying goodbye. It's that opening that next chapter and that further professional and personal development component. As they say about people, jobs, or whatever, there are certain seasons within your life. And I'm so thankful for that first season, or that second season, if you will, because it's just one more area that has pushed me to where I'm at today. And I will always be so appreciative of my time at Winnebago, my time at Hillsborough. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a little bit. It's something that these moments really do help you just get into that. Comes back to everything you've ever learned becomes a part of what you do.
I want to take a quick moment to pause here, because there's something I hear over and over again as I talk to local government leaders from across the country. The work can often feel heavy. The expectations are high, and most days it can feel like you're carrying all that weight alone. That's why I created the Municipal Leadership Development Circle, or what we call the MLDC. The MLDC is a community of local government leaders from across North America who are committed to growing together, supporting one another, and leading well in the middle of significant pressure, not just in theory, but in day-to-day practice. It's a place to think clearly, learn from others who truly understand your unique context and work, and to be reminded that you're not the only one navigating these unique challenges. If you're looking for connection, perspective, and a steady place to keep developing as a leader, I'd love for you to learn more. You can find details at HaltingWinter.com/MLDC. That's HaltingWinter.com/MLDC. Now, let's get back to the conversation. I love a part of your story. There's multiple aspects I just want to highlight. that you're not too proud to muck a stall. I've cleaned out many a horse stall. I grew up on a ranch, and that was my the neighbors had horses, and so that was my one of my many jobs was cleaning up. And that smell of horse urine on hay will forever live in my nostrils.
You can't get rid of it. You can't.
You can't. It's just it's just
Honestly, I don't know about you, Seth, but I went back a couple summers ago just to catch up with old colleagues, and I there was a little bit of an itch to say, "Hey, you want me to hop in the boat or hop in the skid steer and help you muck out?" Like, not that I would want to, but you know what? There is something about it. There just is. There just absolutely is.
There totally is, and you know, I wonder as you continue to serve in city administration, you know, Wisconsin has this. In fact, Stevens Point, one of the pastors I worked for was from Stevens Point, and he came out here to Washington. He was a pastor in Olympia, and I just remember, you know, when you're a lead pastor, much of your time is spent in an office preparing keynote, you know, messages, sermons, and counseling, and you're often behind a desk or sitting across from someone. I just remember we had a ton of snow one winter. I think it was on Christmas Eve. And again, you've got Christmas Eve services, right? We gotta deliver. And he was out in the parking lot and someone brought over their backhoe and he was cleaning, you know, and you had hundreds of other people who would have loved to have been out there, but he was like, he knew he wanted it. He was like, no, I want to get out of this office and go do some work. And so it was just kind of funny how that works. But I love that. I love that a part of your story. And I think another thing to highlight for young people specifically who are trying to get into city administration or into management or into whatever it is, that next rung on the ladder, you have to be persistent. And I think that's the issue of all humanity. We live between our ears, and we live in such a day with social media and all the other things that it's very easy to get negative about your own self-worth and your value and your identity. And you got to get out of that. You got to, the more you can be secure in who you are, that you don't have every strength. You do have some strengths, some particular strengths and skills. You need to own those. You need to sell those, but you can't take rejection as personal that you don't matter or you're not going to make it. You got to be tenacious and persistent, and you knock on doors and a door will open. And I love that your story. You didn't go, you could have went, well, I don't want to, if I'm second fiddle, right? You could have gone into your head about some excuse and been like, well, no, if you had your chance and I don't want to do it now because whatever it is. Instead, you're like, of course, that's why I interviewed. Let's go. Like, I'm not going to let rejection be the end of my story. I'm going to get after it. I love that. Tell us about the city of Hillsboro. What's the size? Where is it at in Wisconsin? Give us a little lay of the land for our national audience.
No, absolutely. Hillsboro, Wisconsin there's a lot to say about it. I love my time, and I'll just preface that Hillsboro is a rural community. When I say rural, I mean Amish country. Um, it's a community of about 1,400 in southwest Wisconsin, Vernon County, the Driftless region. It's kind of noted as kind of like part of the gateway to the Driftless. Beautiful, beautiful area. Here's the thing, though. You're 30 to 40 minutes from any major community. And by major, I mean something that has like a larger grocery store than just a local thing. And the local county market was great. But to get to like a Piggly Wiggly, Festival Foods, Pick and Save, whatever, Walmart, you're driving probably 40, 45 minutes. Or to get to La Crosse, an hour, Madison, hour and a half, right? You're in the middle, kind of nowhere. But there's a beauty to that, especially at the night. During the night, with very little light pollution, absolutely breathtaking. Hillsboro is one of those communities that I'm so fortunate to have started my career there. In all seriousness, if it was closer to where I grew up in the central Wisconsin region, I probably could have spent another 5 to 10 years. The dynamic, the council, the team, the staff, they are truly amazing. The community, amazing. They've got some great food options. They've got a great brewery. Hillsborough Brewing Company, I gotta say, I really do enjoy it, even though I'm no longer able to get out there too often. Um, they have such great options, such a good community. Uh, and in fact, it's funny because when I interviewed for the job, and I'm not kidding here, Seth. When I interviewed for the job, one of the things that they asked was why Hillsborough? And I actually told them that there were a couple things that I really enjoyed about it: the community dynamic, the tight knit community component. But I also said it kind of reminded me of a community that I kind of grew up around and really enjoyed being around it, and kind of really spent a lot of time in my upbringing. And I'm not kidding. I said it kind of reminds me of a community like Wapaka, where I'm at now, because Wapaka is a community that while I didn't grow up here, I spent a lot of time on the chain. I spent a lot of time going downtown at Simpsons, at the Rosa. I mean, I have such a strong component of Wapaka in me already. And I actually said during my interview with Hillsborough, it reminds me of a smaller version of Wapaka. And a couple of them were like, I have no idea where that is. I'm like, you gotta check it out. And now I say the same thing truly about Hillsborough Wapaka. It's kind of like a smaller version of Wapaka, um, or a bigger version of Hillsborough, because there's so much of that component. There's especially like the dynamic, the community impact, right? Wapaka is in a very similar situation as Hillsborough. With it's not just the immediate boundaries. Some communities you're just working within your jurisdiction of boundaries. Here, there's such a long-standing relationship with the townships. Same situation as Hillsborough, and that's such a critical component, right? But Hillsborough is such a good community to start off with as a first-time administrator. Um, and I don't want to say that the team taught me how to be an administrator, but truth be told, there is that component where they really helped me hone in on all of my skills: communication, management, um, ethics, just general style, every component, the transparency, just how to facilitate yourself, how to facilitate meetings, the community engagement. Um, I learned so much about myself with that job, because I'm not just the city administrator. I am pretty much public works director, more or less finance director, HR, right? Community and economic development, IT. You're wearing every hat, and you have to work with everything. Um, and having had that ability without having been a management analyst or a deputy/assistant administrator, um, getting kind of thrown into it, kind of it opens your eyes very quickly. And I will say it is very, very humbling. The work that goes into it for a lot of these rural communities across the state and the country, when you're wearing all of the hats, you definitely do not always get the recognition, or sometimes, unfortunately, even the respect, uh, because you have to do it all, right? Because you don't have the staff, you don't have someone that can pick up the slack. It's either you do it or it doesn't necessarily always get done. And that was a situation for me there where if I wasn't going to do it, no one else would.
It is one of the things I think that's so important. It's been echoed on this podcast multiple times, is starting in a small place. In fact, the episode that just aired today, Craig Honeycutt just retired from Burlington, North Carolina, long distinguished career. And one of his big things was, he goes, I just want to encourage people to start at a small city. There's nothing wrong with the rallies and the big cities, but we all kind of want to go there. And he goes, you can get pigeonholed into one thing, into one area, and it doesn't really prepare you for city management. If you want to be a city manager, city administrator, the best thing you can do is go to somewhere small and learn it, wear all the hats, get your eyes into how the different personalities. I think it's like an orchestra. I have a keynote, in fact, I give that talks about the similarities of a city manager and an orchestra conductor, and how your job isn't to be the best, the most proficient musician, because there's too many musicians. Like I can't play the flute the best and the trumpet and the percussion, etc. But what I can know is I can know about them and I can understand, so I can speak some language, but rely on them to be the best, and then bring all of them together in harmony. And I think what you did in Hillsborough, I'm sure, bore to that experience. You spend 4 or 5 years there. You spend a good chunk of time, and then again, I love the Wapaka's already in your story. You're gonna transition here to Wapaka. You did that in 2025. Tell us about Wapaka. Again, you mentioned it already. It's just a little bit bigger Hillsborough, but I think one of the unique things too, and I want you to dive into this with Wapaka. Tell us about where it is in Wisconsin. These cities, like you mentioned with Hillsborough, it's away from everything. And sometimes that can be like, oh, it's just in the middle of nowhere. But I think one of the cool things about places like this is it's so much easier for them to have an identity, to be like, this is who we are, because there's no one else. There's no real competition. I'm not trying to be you. We can be us, and no one's out going to tell us we can't. And so I think that's really cool. And I think it's one of the things that's attractive, especially now, is there's always a push and a pull with people. Oh, I want to be in the urban. And now we saw that people fled the urban environment during the pandemic because they're like, gosh, I don't want to be around people. And so everyone wanted property. I'm sure places like Hillsborough, Wapaka kind of grew and saw some growth in that. And I think what's attractive is if your city is unique, it attracts people because they can make a decision, right? If I just go, it's kind of like going to a restaurant where everything is just blah. It's just kind of like, I don't know what to order. Like it's all just kind of cheap frozen food, versus like, no, I'm going to a great barbecue place. And the guy's been barbecuing for 30,000 years on this old charbroiler, it's got story. So anyway, talk to us about Wapaka, what brought you there, and tell us a little about the city.
No, absolutely. So it is funny when I talk about how in my Hillsborough interview, I mentioned Wapaka, and I did a little bit of that with Hillsborough to Wapaka. And I even mentioned that story because, again, I wasn't really looking for a change. I really enjoyed my time there. And the biggest thing for me was and is family, right? Um, Having family 2.5 hours away kind of wasn't great. Trying to drive that once a month or twice a month, whatever it might be. It made for some pretty long nights. If there's a family event going on where you don't finish up until 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, you might not be getting home until almost 12:30, 1 a.m. And when you have a 7:30 or 8 o'clock meeting, it makes for a very short sleep. And I value that. But also, I really do value the family component, and I'll just highlight. I have absolutely no issue sharing this, obviously, and that's why I am. But I faced some medical issues myself. In December of 2021, I was admitted to the ICU for a week with kidney failure, respiratory failure, went septic, coded. I mean, it was not good. For about a day or so, I was the most critical patient pretty much in the hospital with all of the ailments going on. And so perspective, right? And that's what I'm getting at. Perspective is so important. While I love my time in Hillsborough, I also had a second realization that you only have so much time in life, and your family only has so much time, your friends, right? And so a strong component of me wanting to get back to the region was for the family, the friendships, camaraderies, and everything. Those coming back to those little moments in life. Now, I again had not really been looking. I had been approached. In fact, there was maybe a job that I didn't even interview for, and they're like, "Hey, well, if you want to write your own offer, like kind of thing." And I'm like, "Oh, that's scary. I don't know if I want to even look at that kind of location." And honestly, I was really good with where I was at. Had some great projects in the works. We had received about $3.5-ish million in state, local, federal funding over the course of 3.5 years. And I was happy with it. And then all of a sudden, I get a text message from my sister, and it was a picture of a text message between her and her sister-in-law. And kind of paraphrasing here, but it's just that, is this something Josh can apply for? And it was a picture of the announcement that uh, my predecessor, Aaron Jensen, had resigned, or had submitted his resignation and would be resigning. And immediately I was like, oh, oh, all right. Um, this, wow. One of those like, oh crap moments, right? Um, I was in shock first off. I mean, Aaron Jensen was and is um, such an upstanding individual and professional. And he departed for personal reasons to move with his family, for his wife, to pursue continued education, which I think is absolutely incredible. But that opened the door here for Wapaka. So we fast forward a couple weeks. I finally reached out to her. I'm like, hey, give me the lowdown, right? Where are things at? We chatted, we had some lunch, and just kind of caught up. Professional colleagues. We've connected over the years, and I knew immediately that this was a community that I wanted to pursue. Not not just because of getting closer, right? Again, there were other jobs that I could have looked at to get me closer. Um, Truth be told, it wasn't even about the money component. It's when you know. And Wapaka is one of those communities that there's a lot going on. I can't stress that enough. I'm still incredibly in awe of all of the projects going on, and the grant funding, everything. Just the dynamic of this community is incredible. You've got multi-million dollar projects here, multi-million dollar projects there. You've got a budget $23 million plus. You've got full-time staffing of around 80, but overall employees are around the 250 to 300 range. There's so much going on here that it just was a community that I wanted to be a part of. With there's so much going on with the arts network, so much going on with the nonprofit organizations that to me it was a no-brainer to apply. And so I did. And I submitted my application, and about 4 weeks later was interviewed. And as they say, the rest is history. I will say I was not rejected from the job initially. So I'm one for one in that regard, or excuse me, 1 for 2 in that regard of being offered the job on the first go around. And it really has just been such a surreal experience because, again, while I'm not from the city or the community of Wapaka, I spent a lot of my life here. A lot of summers, a lot of winters, a lot of time just up and down the streets, going downtown, going out to the lake, spending time at the restaurants and movie theaters and everything. And Wapaka has been a place where I've always kind of called it home without actually calling it home. And now, about 8 months on the job, having bought a house here and everything between, I truly do call it home. And I'm so thankful for every moment about it.
I love this. So if you're not familiar, for the audience, again, Green Bay, Milwaukee, in between those is this big lake. What's the lake called?
The lake between Green Bay
and Milwaukee, the big one there.
Winnebago?
Winnebago, right? And then Oshkosh is on the west side of that. So Wapaka is in between Oshkosh and Stevens Point. So it's kind of there. Now it says that the city is about 6,000 plus residents, but it swells to like 30,000 seasonally. What in the world are people going to Wapaka for? What is going on? Because I would think they'd be going down to the lake, but again, Wisconsin has a number of lakes like Minnesota. What's going on? Tell us about why people are traveling in abundance to this town.
Yeah, no, I absolutely great question there. That's the fun of it, right? I mean, the population 6,400, whatever it is, but once you get into the summertime and everything that goes on to it, yeah, it's like 30,000. And it's not just one thing, to be clear. Because you've got involvement with the townships, you've got the summer rec programs, but you have the chain of lakes, and it's a series of lakes. I'm going to butcher how many there are. I want to say 12, 14 lakes approximately. I'm sure I'll be corrected about that by someone. But it's a series of lakes that are just absolutely incredible. And it really is such a cool thing to be able to have. Um, it's you have to see it to really uh, you have to see it to really understand the true beauty of it. Um, they're spring fed lakes, right? And it's always consistently moving. Um, and it's such a good place to be in the summertime on the water. Great for tubing, water skiing, just regular boating, fishing, everything in between. Um, it's just, yeah, words don't really necessarily do it justice. And in the summertime, it's just such a good, relaxing area to be out at. Uh, and there's a lot of vacation homes, a lot of rentals, not a lot, but a fair amount of rentals out there. And I mean, people that set it up for a rental. I mean, there is a family I know where they've been going to the same spot for like 30 years. It's like their vacation for 2 weeks. And their kids were pretty much born there, and they spent 2 weeks every summer at the cottage renting it out. And I think that it's it really is part of a person's life. It's part of that story. And the chain, while not in the city itself, it really does have a significant impact with the city and the functions because of what we do with our sewer within our general involvement. And we have a lot of people coming downtown. Uh, when I say Wapaka isn't your typical community of 6,300 or so population, I mean it because it might be 6,300 on paper, but our overall impact radius with services on an average day is well over 15,000. Then you get into the summertime, yeah, you're looking at probably around 30,000. And that's absolutely incredible. And it shows with what we do within every department, our community economic development, our finance, our public works, our policing, our recreation. I will absolutely call out our Parks and Rec team because they do such great things with all of the rec component of it. Having a partnership with the towns to be able to provide rec leagues to all of the towns that were attached with, I think is absolutely incredible. Because it just is another way to show what that intergovernmental relationship can do when put together. And I'll be honest, it's incredible. You got to experience it. That's all I'll put it at.
Well, I think it is a unique thing, especially for me, from a West Coast boy. Like, again, we had a lake. I had my family had a boat, and we would go out wakeboard and ski, but it was never like an idea to go like that was going to be our vacation. It's a very Midwest thing, it seems, to go. I think everyone I know that grew up in Minnesota had a lake house in Wisconsin. And so it just seems like, and I know people in Missouri that's their summer vacation was to go out to the lake. They went to the lake, and that was either, the one in the middle. It was out to, I can't remember the lake that's out by Branson, but they knew what the lake was, and they would go out there, they would get their vacation home, they would spend a week or two. And yeah, that was like it. And like you said, 30 years, multiple generations of families. It's just a really cool thing. I think these cool things that the great, across the United States, we have these different kind of vacation life rhythms. And again, cities play such huge role in that, like 6,400 to 30,000. That's crazy. And then I'm sure you have residents who they complain because now, traffic is, but then they also, I'm sure many of them love it because that's how they live. Like, that's the mom and pop shop. That's how they make their money for the year. And so it's just these cool dynamics of what I don't think people understand. Local government is one of the engines for these. It keeps, like, without the infrastructure support, you can't handle that. Like, a place would shut down, it'd fracture overnight in 1,000 different places if you didn't have some real foresight into thinking about all the logistics that go into that. Oh, we could talk forever on this. I want to be mindful of your time. Let's talk about real quick, because again, I'm coming out to the WCMA, the Wisconsin City County Management Association, the winter conference here this week. You are a regional director of this. Talk about, because again, you're a young guy, and I think it's one of the things we want to encourage young people to aspire to want to take on roles of assistant and city administrator, whatever that is, whatever those department directors. A lot of times you can feel out over your skis, just like again in your story. Like, I can't go to college, that's not me. I can't become a city administrator, I'm not trained yet, I got to go put in time. I think that what's so great about these associations is they do multiple things. There's training, sure, but more important, there's network. You're going to be able to build relationships with people that when you face something, and I'm sure you could tell me 10,000 times where you had to face something that was brand new, and instead of pulling out your hair, which it seems like you've done none with that full head of hair, you've seen I have not learned that. I try to do it all myself instead of just picking up the phone and going, hey, have you gone through something like this? Putting it out on the listserv or whatever it is. Talk about the importance of the WCMA in associations in your career, what they've meant to you, and the way that they serve you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is such a great question. I wasn't necessarily as involved when I started, um, because I think, like everybody, you're trying to get your footing. Some people get heavily involved right away. Some people it takes a little bit. Some people don't, and that's okay too. I found and continue to find so much value with the WCMA, and it's largely because of the networking, the camaraderie, that understanding that if I'm going through something, it doesn't matter what it is, positive or negative, someone else has probably experienced it in some fashion as well. And being able to tap into my colleagues, it's it's absolutely incredible because I know that they are going to be a great sounding board. They're going to be a good resource to make sure that when a decision is having to be made, hey, I'm able to say, hey, what do you think about this? Have you had an experience with this before? And sometimes we'll say yes, sometimes we'll say no. Um, and I at Hillsborough, I was appointed in the fall, I think it was fall of 2023, um, fall/winter 23/24 as a regional director, regional coordinator, um, for Region 4. And that's kind of like that Southwest region within Wisconsin. And it was incredible being able to be working with other administrators across the region, connecting with them, just checking in and learning more about them, about how things are going. And truly, it's also very, again, humbling when someone reaches out and asks you, like, hey, Josh, I'm a new administrator. Can you give me some insight? Uh, and mind you, at 3.5, 4 years in the field, having someone come up to me and say, hey, you've been around a while. Can you give me some of your insight? I don't take that like I don't, because um it every opportunity that I have, every opportunity that I feel a lot of our colleagues have to share their experience and their wisdom, I think that almost every one of them will say, yes, I would be happy to, because we all know that the continuous education, the continued conversations, that's ultimately just making everybody better, right? Being able to ask the questions. Now I serve as the regional director for um, Region 3, which is incredible. There's a shift though from Region 4 to Region 3, and that's because not only are you dealing with more people, but you're dealing with a lot of larger communities. So you're working with the Brown County, the Green Bay, Ashwaubenon, the Outagamie with the Appleton region, and obviously Waupaca and Winnebago and Oshkosh and Neenah and everything. And there's a lot of activities going on. And so it is really incredible being able to continue having conversations with folks in the field and helping them bridge conversations and just being able to be a support as well as someone to be a sounding board for others now, especially as I've gone more into the field. Um, like any organization, you get what you put into it. I am very fortunate that at a conference a couple years ago, a good friend of mine, Ben Krumnauer, he really strongly encouraged me to get involved, right? Didn't necessarily matter in what capacity, but just getting involved, networking a little bit more. I'm so thankful that he helped push me into that, and because ultimately I got involved with the conference committee, the talent recruitment, and being able to be involved with the two different committees while serving as a regional director, being able to get that having that engagement, hearing about how other people are doing, um, and being a soundboard, being someone that if they have a bad day, like actually today during this, I got a person call me twice, just saying, "Hey, can I vet?" Having knowing that they can lean on me and vice versa, having those relationships really do make all the difference in the world. Because this job, this career, it has its moments, right? And knowing that there are multiple people, knowing that there's a cohort, knowing that there's a coalition, an association that not just supports and backs you, but cares about you. I think that really is what says it all.
So good. It's so good. And that's, I think there's something there, just to highlight again. It's not just that you have a resource for training or for networking, it's you become a resource. I used to say that as a pastor, trying to encourage people to be a part of small groups. And, I get it. You get home from work and you're tired. Now you got to get the kids together and go over to someone's house. And it's so easy just to go, nah, I'm not going to do it this week. I think it's the same thing like, I got things to do. I can't make it to the conference. It's just too much. When you go, it's not only that you will be encouraged, I'm sure, from the keynotes and from the trainings and from the interactions, but like you said, all of a sudden someone will come up to you and say, "Hey, could you help me?" And you being it, like if you're not there, they don't get the help that they need, or they gotta, they don't get your voice, they don't give your story. And I think it's that duality of you get to be encouraged, but you get to be an encouragement, and that's the strength of network. And so I thank you for sharing that. So good. Oh, Josh, we could talk forever. So many good things. And again, it's just starting. I love that. I always talk about work-life balance at the end, and I think just in your story, I think that's part of the reason you went to Wapaka is because you go, man, I want to be around family. I think that's the thing. There's no such thing as work-life balance. There's just intention, and that's the thing is I think it is good to be intentional about, man, friends matter, family matters, and I want to be able to, that 2.5 hour drive, even though Hillsborough is awesome, it still means that you got to make some sacrifices. And I think that's one of the things. Hey, I can still be a city administrator. I can still have impact, but I can be closer to family. And so I can care for those things there. And those are the decisions I like to see made because they're intentional and they show the values and the life that you want to live outside of the job, especially a job that can become so demanding. And it's so servant hearted, right? Because you see the day-to-day impact of the work that you're doing. It can be really easy to then sacrifice everything else on that altar and just go, well, the city needs me and this mission is too important. Instead of going, you're still a person, you still have a life. And remember, both Hillsborough and Wapaka will be there long after you're gone, no matter how long you stay. Yes, it's great work, but you got to take care of yourself. You got to fill your tank and make good decisions so that you can last and have a real legacy. So really appreciate you sharing today. Really good stuff. Anything else before we wrap?
No, honestly, I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to connect and chat about my route and just to reiterate, there is no such thing as a wrong route. There's no such thing as a wrong career path because every route that you take, every decision that you make helps you grow, helps you on the trajectory of life. And that's the whole point of it, right? I mean, truly, the only thing that I'll say is there are people that do and there are people that don't. So be a doer, don't be a don'ter, right? It's so easy to find the negativity in life, but it's sometimes more important to take the road less traveled a little bit sometimes. I am very thankful for all of the experiences, the good and the bad, truly, because it has helped me become who I am today.
So good. I love that your story from the beginning, you are an experienced guy. You're doing the arts and you're doing all the things. And Then you go to Hillsborough and you do all the things, right? You're doing all the things at Winnebago County. You got the horse manure, you got the COVID testing. I mean, I think that's the big thing. Go live life, people. Don't get in your head and start to especially disqualify yourself with negative thoughts and excuses. Like you just said, don't be a don'ter, go be a doer. Just say yes to the opportunity and keep pounding on the door, because I think that's the thing for this younger generation. There's a bit of entitlement of like, well, I got a degree. Why aren't people coming to me and flocking to me? It's like, no one's coming to you. You got to go make yourself known. And that's the other thing. If you're in a city right now and maybe you're an intern, or maybe you feel like you're the grunt shoveling the horse manure, does anyone know that you aspire? Go have a conversation with someone. Ask the city manager out to lunch and say, hey, I just admire you and I love what you do, and I want to aspire to that to one day. Do you have any insights? What are some things I could do now to hone leadership, to hone what are the skills you think are important? Go start having some conversations, because I think really genuinely, especially in local government, the mission is great and people want to help, and we need people. We want people to aspire to these positions. And so, man, thanks for sharing, Josh. Incredible life, incredible leadership journey, and some really stellar insights for our audience today.
Well, I appreciate that, Seth, and appreciate all the work that you're doing with the podcast, especially highlighting all of the great things for not just here today, but every other individual that you spoke with, because there's so much great things to be able to highlight. So keep up the great work with it all.
Well, again, I will see you soon, but obviously by the time of this recording, we'll have already hung out. So
absolutely looking forward to it. We'll see you here in a couple of days, and looking forward to being this released.
Sounds good. The stories we share here on the HaltingWinter podcast remind us where government really lives, locally, right here in our cities, our counties, the communities that shape our everyday life. If today's conversation resonated with you, please subscribe and share the episode to help these stories reach others. I'm Seth Winterhalter. You can find me at HaltingWinter.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.